So welcome to this fourth in our short series of dialogues about how do we step up to the world's challenges. We did a short introduction, then we looked at the 7 major global challenges as we see it, and their interconnections. And then we put right at the heart, what's the shift in human consciousness that will allow us to see how all of those are interconnected. And as we ended up last time, how we are part of all those issues, and those issues are part of us. That there isn't a separation, and we cannot solve them out there, and we can't solve them just by meditating. So what we were going to look at in this one, and I'd like to say this, Giles, at the beginning, is what's being called for is a faster, massive leap in evolution than ever has happened. It was Reg Revans, the founder of Action Learning, who said, unless we're learning faster than the environment is changing, we are on the Darwinian road to extinction. And one of the things we know is the world is changing and becoming more complex because of human intervention than ever before. And so it's requiring a co-evolution between the world and human beings in a level of complexity and speed that's never ever happened previously. And at the heart of that is, what can we each do in this final dialogue that can be a beneficial contribution to that human evolution? So let's look at, you ended the last one, Giles, with just talking about, first of all, what are some of the practices we need to do for ourselves that help us move into participatory consciousness?
Yeah. Well, I think firstly, it's important to reconnect with one's own source. So we often talk about purpose, and we talk about values, and yet sort of underpinning that sense of purpose and values is an ability to really connect with one's true nature. And I think that's important. Now, that is a sort of a life journey, and yet we can engage in certain practices, certain rhythms to our day, to our life, that help bring in a deeper sense of self, and to allow the ego sense of self to quieten slightly. For me, it is going into nature and connecting with nature. And now I don't mean nature just out there. It could be, for instance, if I'm having to do a conference in a big hotel or a city somewhere, that doing Qigong is connecting me with the life force, is connecting, allowing me to feel more coherent. And from that place, I'm more able to then show up with a sense of purpose, which then informs my values and behaviors. So by connecting with that participatory awareness, something flows through me. Peter.
I love that, Charles. As you know, I've written stuff about how do we work from source rather than from effort? And I think that does link to what we were saying in the earlier videos. How do we work from flow rather than from problem control?
Yeah. And a lot of it
that we have thought.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is this shift from control, the desire to want to control that we talked about before, the monoculture and control. So there's a letting go process, what the ancient Greeks called kenosis, that this essential letting go. I mean, the contemporary leadership work of Theory U of Otto Scharmer and the Presencing Institute is very simple but powerful, which is this letting go as we go down the U, to connect to source, to connect to our deeper sense of truer nature, to engage in this participatory consciousness. And then from that place of flow, of deeper intention and deeper quality of attention, we can bring in a way of engaging. And then practices like deep listening, nonviolent communication, dialogue and so forth, allow that flow to then become generative in our conversations.
So let me, before we get to that, just bring in another area, because I'm totally with you about how we have to find the source within us and beyond us. The Tao that flows from Taoism talks about the Tao is both out there and in here. It's in flow. And so absolutely, we both do a lot of work going out into nature. working with the many sentient beings that we share this planet with. The woodlands, the ecosystems that we're embedded within. But I think there's another one, which is, I think one of the first practices we have to do is to notice our own fixity.
Yeah.
So to catch when we start, you know, I often say one of the first things you can do is develop wide-angled empathy. To have as much empathy for everyone in your client's story, if you're a coach or a consultant, as you do for the person in the room. And I talk about watching the news, and can you have wide-angled empathy for every individual, every country, every organization that's mentioned in the news? And can you respond with compassion and just notice your reactivity? But of course, we have to also then have wide-angled empathy for ourselves and say, oh, there I go. You know, I've got reactive to Mr. Trump again, or Mr. Johnson, or Angela Merkel, whoever. Or I've got furious with people I see as bigots, or because in that we do a splitting. So how do we notice also our simple language that puts the problem out there and atomizes it and separates ourselves from? How do we notice how we constantly fall back down those 4 levels we've talked about?
Yeah.
In a way that's forgiving of ourselves.
Yeah.
But noticing.
Yeah. Because if we don't forgive, we're back into the grasping, we're back into the judging. So in a way, this is the beauty of the mystery of life, which is by opening, by letting go, by trusting life, which is difficult. It's easy to say, difficult to do, especially in the midst of so much turmoil and so much pressure and stress. I mean, some of the people I coach, some of the leaders I'm coaching, they're having wide different experiences within the same day. They're on Zoom calls, they've got homeschooling, they've got all sorts of challenges. And yet in the midst of this, if we can connect, if we can drop down, and as you say, we can start from that place of interconnection, have a sense of empathy. Empathy doesn't just come, we don't just sort of add empathy in. It comes from that knowing that everything is interconnected, and that actually that person that could be seen as an enemy or the other is actually showing and teaching me something about myself, because we're all showing up in the world and the inner and the outer is interconnected. Now, that is a shift in consciousness. How we bring that in the midst of the busyness is through pausing, through connecting, through being present of our own body mind as an instrument of conducting that life force.
So let me bring that down to some very practical things we can each do. As you were talking, the idea came to me, we should talk about coffee breaks or tea breaks. We should talk about reconnecting to source breaks, to stop the Zoom and go and reconnect to source in whatever way, by drinking water, as you just done, yeah. by taking a different breathing, by looking out the window, whatever reconnects us to source: food, drink, air, view. The other very, very practical, you know, I constantly try and interrupt people who talk about impossible clients, difficult, toxic bosses, difficult customers. I say there's no such thing as an impossible boss or customer or employee. There's just a mode of connection we have not yet found. That simple act of always locating the issue in a connection, not in a person or a part. You know, we shouldn't talk about uncoachable clients. There's no such thing. There's just a mode of connecting and coaching we haven't yet found. So our most difficult people are often the best teachers, because they take us to the edge. And another very practical, you know, I never ask clients, whether as a consultant or as a coach, what do you want? I ask, what's the work that the world's needing us to do together? Yeah. And I don't expect them to know or have an answer. I'm wanting to do work where we are spending most of our time where they don't have the answer, I don't have the answer, but we both recognize that life is requiring us to find one. And I think it's staying, you know, what, again, you mentioned Otto Scharmer, it's staying leaning into the emergent, to use some of his language, where together we recognize that any of these world's challenges cannot be solved by individual scientists or politicians or even consultants and coaches and leadership experts. We can only together find the response by creating the space for grace where we discover together between human beings, but always listening to the more than human world. It's our best teacher.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you, Giles, for joining with me on these short dialogues. We are planning that we will later, if these are received, do let us know if they're well received and helpful, and we'll do some more. But I think this is a great start just on what can we do to step up to this great challenge of shifting human consciousness for human beings to be able to address this multitude of interconnected challenges.
Beautiful. Creating a space for grace to enter. I love it. Thank you, Peter. Go well.
And you, and have a great rest of your birthday.
Thank you.